Welcome everybody to the Getting Ahead panel discussion. And Phil Duvall, as you all know, is the author of Getting Ahead in a Just-Gettin By World. And today we have a couple Getting Ahead grads and a facilitator online to talk about their experiences with Getting Ahead. So welcome, Phil, and have a good conversation.
All right, thank you, Ruth. And thank you all for joining us. I was looking at the chat as it came in, and I'm recognizing a lot of people. It's like old home week. So this is great. So you'll get to meet some folks in just a minute, as Ruth said, and they'll introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about where they're from. And then we'll kind of go through the highlights of what Getting Ahead is and what kind of impact it has and so on. The person who's moderating for us and minding the chat is Carol Stegman. Carol, you got to turn your camera on for just a second so we can see you. Are you there? There you are. Okay. So Carol goes way back. How many years is it, Carol?
I graduated in 2011 from Getting Ahead.
Okay, 2011. So she's been at this for a long time and has a lot of experience in the community and so on. And the thing that she said most recently that really sticks in my head is we were talking about what to do with COVID, and, you know, how to handle all this and how that's changing everything and so on. And she said, well, you guys ought to learn from us people that lived in poverty because we know how to do that stuff. Isn't that kind of your quote?
Yes.
We know how to manage
Yes.
it. When things fall apart, we're the ones that pick it up and go. So that really sticks with me, Carol. So thanks for joining today.
Thank you.
Sure thing. All right, so we come from all over the country, so we'll just go down the line and everyone can introduce themselves. So Ruby, you want to go first and tell us about where you are and what Getting Ahead is like there and what your community is like?
Okay. Hi, my name is Ruby Tidwell. I'm from Gainesville, Florida currently, and I attended Getting Ahead facility at Catholic Charities. The facilitator was Bishop James Dixon, and I'm currently an office manager because of the program. I even received a raise while in the first few months of the program.
That's pretty cool. So I think you said that it's a faith-based organization that you work with, is that right?
Oh, yes. Without it, I wouldn't have had the wisdom to choose the program, honestly. Mm-hmm. And I have been clean and sober for 17 years when I started this program. I started the program in 2017 because it starts with financial fitness, and then it's Bridges to Prosperity, which is the Getting Ahead program, and then you go graduate from the circle. That's when you practice everything that you learned and set your SMART goals, and then you proceed to the circle program, and that's where you graduate. You put everything into motion. Right. It's like putting a fine engine in a car. They give us all the tools, but until you crank that puppy up and go somewhere, you're just sitting in a garage. So yeah.
Yeah, wow. That's a great way of looking at it. Wow. Well, congratulations on your 17 years of sobriety.
Yes, it was all due to my higher power.
Yeah, I came from the addiction field, you know, before I got into this. So I ran a treatment program for 20 years. And sometimes people that are in recovery will go, hey, Phil, I kind of see a little recovery in here. There is. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's what the first 3 steps teach you. I can't, he can, and I'm going to let him. So, yeah. And it keeps you honest with yourself. It teaches you how to be honest with yourself.
Yep. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that. Chantal, tell us about where you're from and what's going on.
Hi, so my name is Chantal Jones. I am from Honolulu, Hawaii. I was born and raised in public housing, and it's the same community where I still work and live. Same place I took the Getting Ahead class. I'm a blind entrepreneur. I'm the owner of Shan Shack here in my community. And yeah.
So when did you go through Getting Ahead?
I'm really a new graduate. I graduated almost a year now, in 2019, in like December of 2019.
So the community that you're in, those of us that don't know much about Hawaii, right? What is that like? Where exactly are you in?
So I'm on the island of Oahu, and the community that I live in is called Kalihi. And in Kalihi, we have the public housing called KPT, Kuhio Park Terrace. And, you know, it's known to be very in economic instability and poverty, but we have grown a lot since I was a little girl. When growing up here, you know, I remember gangs and people jumping off the buildings, and, you know, just a lot of you know, violence. I grew up, my mom was a single parent. She raised four children, and, you know, being the middle child, I felt, you know, like I didn't have a place. So I kind of made wrong choices and got into, you know, bad crowds. I was, you know, once addicted to I got heavily, you know, used into drugs, and became a teenage mom at a very young age. And, you know, just I started my life when I was like 25 years old, just started taking, you know, my concrete steps into getting ahead to make a better future for, you know, my son who was growing up, and I had to, you know, think of him and his future. And that's when I, you know, reached into my higher power and started taking my concrete steps into getting ahead in my own life. I had to, you know, get into the abstract and look at my life and look at where I wanted to go, and just started, you know, going. And, you know, since going to this Getting Ahead class, it just opened my mind and my heart to, you know, more things. It's not just about, you know, my family and getting ahead. It's about, you know, me and my whole community. And, you know, if we can all work together, we can, you know, have a thriving community, because we're growing, but I know we can grow even to a more better community for our young generations, because here in our community our young ones, our young generations, you know, they're getting into gangs and drugs, and they're, you know, robbing houses around here. So I really want to get to, you know, that generation of kids, because that's where, you know, it starts.
Wow. So it sounds like that's part of your future story, but we'll hear more about that later, right?
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
And no, you have, no, it's perfect. So you also have a really great mental model you're going to share with us, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So folks are going to love to see that. That's just beautiful. So looking forward to that. Kathy, so what's your story?
Hello,
like I don't know
everybody. Many of you do. Hi, my name is Kathy McPherson, and I'm from Columbus, Ohio. Well, that's where I live. I was born and raised in a little village called Urban Crest, Ohio, a little Black community where my great-grandfather, he founded. So everybody in that community was pretty much my relative. But right outside was Grove City, Ohio, and it was pretty much an all-white community. This was way back in the day, as they say, in the 50s and 60s. So I was introduced to Bridges Out of Poverty, I think pretty much in its inception, late 1990s, early 2000s. And when I saw that, when I went to the presentation, Phil and Terry was there. And I said, finally, somebody understands, because I had gone through my life and it was just navigating as a Black African-American female, just trying to get through life and dodging what we had to dodge. You learn how to survive. I went to that workshop every time our Supreme Court put it on. And it made sense. At that time, I was also working in alcohol and drug field and been a counselor, and I worked with most indigent clients. So everything was falling into place. And I said, somebody understands. I got an opportunity to facilitate Getting Ahead in 2004, I believe. Phil came in and we started in our drug court program, and I was a counselor. So it brought everything together, you know, my own personal experience and the experience of the clientele that I was working with, criminal offenders, drug addiction, and all the other barriers that came on. So from there, we put it into the community, and it's just been spreading ever since.
Wow. So Getting Ahead came out first in 2003.
Yeah.
So you were 2004 when you went through it, or
Yes.
got trained as a facilitator.
Trained as a facilitator, it started making sense. It put together pieces in a different language than I had experienced. I experienced them, but didn't have words for them. You just kind of know what to do. Anybody who was raised in poverty knows that. You just survive. You put it together and make it work. And it was written. There was ways to explain it, and some of the things that I didn't know. So it helped me personally as well as professionally and in the community.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. So there, our audience is going, okay, so I know something about these three women, and they're going to learn more as we go along, right?
Right.
And Carol, if questions come up in the chat, feel free to interrupt me. You know, if something is, or if you think it can wait a little bit, I'll leave it to your judgment about when you break in, okay? Got it. All right, so I think it's kind of interesting that we have sort of a theme going on here that has to do with drugs, alcohol, and recovery, right? And so I have, for some time, I've been using something that comes from the 12-step meetings. And so I'll just mention it to our audience so they know the story pattern, so that they know what you're going to be telling. And each one of you will be sharing your story with this pattern. So in lead meetings, in 12-step meetings, there's a pattern to the lead. And it's what was it like, what did you do, and what is it like now? And that allows the audience at a 12-step meeting to, when you're talking about what was it like, they can then identify with the speaker, and they're kind of getting in touch with the fact that, you know, where their addiction matches up with the other person's, and they're reminding themselves that they are addicted. And then what did you do is where they're kind of learning how someone else managed their recovery, how they work with sponsors, how they work the steps, and those kind of things. And then what's it like now provides hope. And I think that's a beautiful pattern that comes from 12-step meetings. So really what we're going to be doing here is telling that story, but we add just one more piece to it. And so when you tell us what it was like, we find out about your life. Then when you say, well, this is what happened, then we ask you, the extra step is, what was it? What was the concept in getting ahead that made the difference? How did you know, what was it there? What was the idea that you could use? And there's lots of ideas in getting ahead. So who knows what it was that sparked a change or a way of thinking for you, but we would like to know that. And then you can tell us what it's like now. And that's kind of like the whole story. And then we'll take We can talk with each other about what's happening in our communities, because getting ahead isn't just about us. I mean, poverty isn't just about us. It's about our communities. And I think each one of you talked a little bit about that. And so that would be something that we can go to next, is what's happening in your community with bridges and everything else that would support getting ahead graduates, or what you would like to see. So we could talk about those things. And I think all of that will give our audience, an idea of what getting ahead is. So let me just take a minute and say to people that might be listening that don't know what getting ahead is. It's a workbook that people use. They sit what we call around a kitchen table, and turns out to be 16 sessions. There's 10 modules that you do while you're going through this. The ideal group size is 12, and we make it a very safe place so that we have group rules to kind of guide it, and we're in a comfortable room and space. And we have facilitators that work with us or share the ideas. But all the learning is done by the investigators, we call them, because being an investigator is a very active way of learning. You're in charge of your own learning, right? So, so the idea that we don't teach means that we rely on the group itself to process all the information. And when I started doing this, I realized first, right off the bat, that people in poverty are problem solvers. They're solving problems all the time. And they know more about their community and about what's happening in their community than I would ever know, right? Because I don't live there. And if I'm middle class and don't live there, I wouldn't, whether I'm in Ohio or anywhere else, I wouldn't know. Poverty is different everywhere. So that allows people to take charge of their own learning. And I often say half of the learning is in the modules that people investigate, and half is in the conversations. And then the idea here is that as people process all of this, they begin to visualize, they determine what is now. They do a mental model of my life now in the very first module. And that's really a pretty painful moment, in the sense that people are putting it all down on paper, and it's a model that they can look at. It's not just words. And we use that to create a discrepancy between what is and what could become the future, a future story. So you have to push against something. So we start out pretty hard, with pretty hard conversations. And sometimes there's tears in those first 2 sessions. And people say to me, why do you start so hard? And my answer is, when people are living in poverty, they're going to talk about what's going on. And that could be hard. I mean, it's just, they're talking about the realities. So we'll just deal with that. There's nothing lacking in people in poverty in terms of courage, right? And grit and determination, all of those things. So we find out right away people are problem solvers. And then, we just start working through these, and people end up generally making an argument for change. And the facilitator is never the one that can do that. It always has to be the investigators that make that argument for change. And I think that makes it powerful, because they do it as a group, they learn as a group. And then the idea is they have a smart plan and all those kind of things that are pretty helpful. And then they take the leap out and start making it happen. So for those of you that have never heard Getting Ahead, that was a snippet. If I missed anything, I'm talking about Ruby, Chantal, Kathy, speak up now if you want to say something about what Getting Ahead is. So yeah, I'll give you a minute to kind of go like, and Phil, you forgot this or you forgot that. So go ahead.
When we look at programs, it's already structured. This is very unstructured. I don't know how many Getting Ahead groups I've done, and they were all different. They're all different. We never know what we're going to get, and that's the treasure for me. Yeah, one of the treasures.
Well, it's not going to get boring if it changes every time.
Never, never boring.
Okay. Ruby, Chantal, anything you want to add about how Getting Ahead works?
By taking a deep dive into the self-assessment and seeing exactly where you are, you can see that you relate to one another, and you're able to have accountability partners in order to move forward. That was what was powerful to me.
Okay. All right, thank you. Anyone
And
else? Yeah.
sorry.
Sorry.
And I'm going to add that at the end of the class, or maybe even during it, you realize not only are you a problem solver, but you can use that on your resume to say, I am solution oriented.
Okay. Yeah. And you can say, I'm an investigator, and they won't know what that is. Okay. Any other thoughts about getting ahead that people should know?
It's about relationships, building relationships, with your classmates, and then building that relationship with your community, with those around you, getting a relationship and really getting to know people and, for who they are, not the situation that they're in.
Yeah. Yeah. I imagine that, well, it seemed to me like people get to know each other very well
Yes.
during getting ahead, right? The kind of sharing that doesn't take place normally, I think.
Yes, definitely.
Okay,
So,
well, yeah.
Phil, we have Chantal Jones on here from Hawaii. And Chantal, where are you from?
I am from Hawaii, Honolulu, Hawaii.
Yes, yes. But we also have another Chantal on. Where are you from? Chantal Quart, is that correct?
Yes, Chantal Carr. I live in Orlando, Florida.
Okay, and did you go through Getting Ahead?
I did. Yep, I was an investigator, then I became a facilitator.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your input.
All right, so let's go to those 4-part stories. And shall I just name someone and we can get started? So Ruby, how about you? What's your 4-part story?
Okay. I already told you my name is Ruby Tidwell, but I'm also number 8 in a family of 12. So yes, I knew what poverty was, and I also knew what middle class was. And by the time I was 39, let's just say my best choice was choosing to go to a treatment program. And I've been clean and sober ever since, thanks to the Lord and the 12 steps. I have a good spiritual base, but all I was doing was paying 10% to my spiritual house of worship, but the rest of the money I was not using wisely. I had 2 jobs, seasonal and a part-time job, and both were only paying minimum wage. 2 outstanding student loans, and my credit score was below 670. I had 11 credit cards when my husband passed away, all with over 75% usage. And I was using retail therapy because in 2017, when I signed up for the class, I had only been a widow 2 years. So I really didn't know how to handle money. My goal was just to pay the bills every month, and ask the Lord to give me the strength to do so. So what changes did I make because of GA? I try to listen twice as much as I speak. As the mother in the church would say, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Listen up and you'll learn twice as much. And my GA tools and my spiritual foundation, they change my thinking process, and it allows me to push beyond my feelings. Because normally if things didn't go my way, I would react with anger or a pity party or just inappropriate behavior. In other words, the only person I wanted to understand was me. And GA changed that. It showed me how other people's mindsets were, so I could become a better communicator. And everything starts at home. So it started affecting my relationship with my daughter, and it became better. And what did I learn? The tools I'm using to overcome poverty and poor communication tools is to be honest with myself about my situation and my willingness to change it. And that's one thing the stability scale teaches you. You might want to change something, but let's be honest with yourself, Ruby. How much do you want to change? You know, what stage are you in? And that really took a load off of me, because there's only so much you can change at any given point. And the most important thing is that I learned about what causes poverty, you know, how it evolved. Because, you know, mindsets of the people you live around blame other people, but it's actually something that happened long before you were ever created, Ruby. And so the program taught me the hidden rules so I could understand how other people process my behaviors, what I say, you know, and that helped me with my communication with my family first, because I could listen to my daughter instead of trying to tell her what to do. I listened to what she needed so we could come to a compromise together. And let's see, with my coworkers, because I no longer thought that I had all the answers, and they really appreciated that. And as I said earlier, I received a raise while I was still in the program because I had started to listen, and my executive director, he saw that. Let's see, and the time management matrix. Now, if you're from a large family, or if you deal with the public, like my job here at GCM is, I was an intake and steps counselor. So I listen to problems and I give solutions. Unfortunately, before the program, I would take all of that home, you know. But my time management matrix, it showed me how things were emergencies and crises, things that were not urgent, other people's problems, and time wasters. And that helped me help the clients. In other words, some people might be upset about a phone bill when actually you can cut that phone bill down and put that money somewhere else. Don't think it's the end of the line because you can't have an iPhone. Get a track phone and pay as you go. In other words, I could help the community with the tools that I learned, but first I had to utilize them myself. And the track phone's not that bad. I still get good reception. Okay, and another important part was learning about the voices. Using the parent voice, especially with someone that's coming in and they're in crisis, was not good. You know, and I wonder why clients would blow up sometimes when you were trying to help them. It's because I was using the wrong voice. But now it's Miss Ruby. Get Miss Ruby, she'll understand. and I like that I can be helpful. And let's see. SMART goals. But before I get into SMART goals, I'd like to be able to recruit like Bishop Dixon recruits, because he can sit in a room with someone that just came in maybe for food at Catholic Charities. And I know of one gentleman he did this with. He talked with him, signed him up for the class. Now that gentleman not only owns a home, and he did not have a home at the time. He only rode a bike. Now this gentleman has a home, a car, and is teaching other people in the community how to go through the stages of getting your credit better and applying for certain free loans and outlets that they can utilize in order to own a home. It's awesome. He's a good spokesman. And and this guy is actually in the commercial. If you ever see the Catholic Charities commercial, the gentleman with the mustache, that's the guy.
All right.
And so my SMART goals, I still utilize, because when they promoted me, just this year to office manager, then I use my SMART goals in order to, at the end of the month, there's all these reports, and everyone used to say what a headache it was. I took my SMART goals and I ate it one bite at a time, like you would with an elephant. I took it and I said, well, what's the most important thing that needs to go out first? I sent the emergency crisis stuff that would, cut off parts of our program. I sent that out first, then the next thing and the next thing.
Wow.
And now when the other people come in, they're like, okay, this needs, no, this, and this. We do it in that order, and everybody can relax. And closing the back door, I learned that. Because when conflict comes, and trust me, it will come, and not just on the job, my flesh and feelings might want to quit or delay or use other people's problems to quit or delay what I need to do. Then I have to remember the quadrants, the time management matrix, and also to remember that's why I have allies. That's why I have a mentor. And some of the people in my class, like even the facilitator, Bishop Dixon, he's still an ally. He still can come here and send people here for services, and I can send people to Catholic Charities for services. And let's see, and to remind myself that I am more than a conqueror. And on my board, I used, after I did my SMART goals, I had 2 tools at the top that weren't in the book, but I learned to use because of the book. And that was this pencil, because everything is subject to change. Everything, okay? And also to remind me that God is in charge, and I can write down all the SMART goals I want. He's gonna erase it, because truly I wanted to be a tax associate. But God said, no, you're gonna be the office manager at this nonprofit, and you're gonna help my people on a daily basis to keep you humble. And it does.
That's a great story.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for sharing that. Really wonderful.
Did I go over my 5 minutes?
I think so.
I'm sorry.
All right, Carol. You can watch the time for us, right? Because it's real easy to, I spent some time talking about what getting ahead is. And so, Carol, if you can keep us on track, that would be helpful.
Oh,
Sure,
okay.
will do.
Okay, so what's it like now? I'll sum it up in 30 seconds. From intake steps counselor to office manager, from assistant clerk for the supervisor of elections to clerk for the last 2 years. My credit score is over 700 now. I only have 7 credit cards with less than 30% usage. And no missed payments. And that's only some of my blessings, because both of my jobs now, for the supervisor of elections and for Gainesville Community Ministry, they both pay well over minimum wage.
Oh, man.
Mm-hmm.
That is great. I'm sure there's applause going on all over the place. People listening to you. That's a super story. Thanks so much for sharing that.
Thank you for
well
letting
done.
me share.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. Chantal Jones from Hawaii. What about you?
Okay, well, so I have my paper here, but I cannot see it, so I'm just gonna go from the top of my head.
All
I know
right.
it's not gonna be as long as Miss Ruby, but
Sorry.
you're an amazing woman.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for sharing that. But for me, so before the getting ahead class, my life was just ordinary. I just wanted more in life for me and my family, and I've took a lot of steps to get to where I am today. Just accepting myself, my blindness, being honest with myself, you know, having to get cleaned off of, you know, drugs, and then go back to school because I dropped out of high school. So I had to, you know, take the steps to go back to adult education and, you know, get my life started. And then I started taking classes to become a blind vendor, because I knew that I needed to start somewhere. And so I, you know, went to those classes and I graduated, and then I finally got my facility in September. I just made 5 years being a blind vendor here in my snack shop. So, you know, life was just, you know, ordinary. I just was, you know, taking my concrete steps for just me and my family. But since getting ahead, it opened up my mind and my heart, and I found my purpose in life. And I realized that, you know, I'm more than just, you know, a mother, a sister, a daughter, a wife. You know, I'm a leader, and I'm a problem solver. And I learned in GA that, you know, people in poverty and economic instabilities, that, you know, we don't choose to be here. We have no control over what keeps us here in poverty. There's a lot of factors that, you know, contributes to us being in economic instability and staying in economic instability. It's because, you know, government policy, cost of living keeps going up, especially here in Hawaii. You know, our cost of living is so hard for a lot for sorry, I lost my frame of thought. But yeah, so I learned that people in poverty, we need a voice, we need support, we need opportunities, we need some, you know, organizations that believe in our community, that we need support. You know, we need people to understand what we're going through, and that, you know, we're not lazy, we're not just drug addicts, we're not just, you know, gangbangers, and, you know, we're human beings, and, you know, we want more in life. And if we have that voice to speak, to get people to understand and look at, hey, look at this community, there's, you know, a lot of need here. And so that's what the Getting Ahead program, it opened my mind and it opened my heart to, you know, really looking into myself and tapping into my higher power, that I can make a difference, I can change. And it has to start with me. And I think the 11 resources is very important for, you know, anyone to help themselves and even their communities to just thrive. You know, the hidden rules, understanding that, you know, there's things in place that we don't understand, but it's there. And, you know, Getting Ahead put those titles to those different things that I didn't understand what was going on. So now I have titles for, you know, things that is going on, like, you know, hidden rules, and just code switching, knowing that, okay, I know what my community is going in now, how can I help my community? And if I am able to code switch, to talk to different people, to bring the support that we need in our community, that, you know, we can change, we can grow. And if I can get, you know, more people to understand and know that, hey, it's not our fault that we're here, and we can try to make a difference. So, you know, it has to start with one person at a time, and just to, you know, open your mind and, you know, think of our younger generation, because that is who's going to be our next leaders in life. And, you know, I learned that it takes a whole community to raise a child. So if I could be a leader and a mentor, I lost Am I still on?
Yeah, you're still
Oh.
on. What happened? The slides came up.
Oh, my slide came up. I'm so sorry. So
Yeah.
I learned if I could be a leader and a mentor, that, we can have a thriving and prosperity community. So I live my life now looking at not just what I can do for myself, but what I can do, to help our community grow. So since the Getting Ahead class, I've joined the coalition for our community, and it's to help, not to help, but to stop underage drinking and drug use. And so we just try to get, everybody together to help out each other. And this right here, what we're showing, I wasn't really ready for it, but this is our mental model of our community prosperity that we did in our cohort. So this is a kalo plant, and this plant is very significant here in Hawaii. It's known as the great life force of, like, the best foods to eat. And so the best way to eat this kalo is the root. You pound it and you make it into poi. And poi, you can feed it to the children, to your infant babies. You can feed it to, the elderly that is, sick. And so I felt like this is the perfect mental model for our community prosperity, because it shows how all 11 resources we can utilize to help the prosperity of our community.
It is beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm sure the chat is just filled up with comments on this. So have you thought about running for office?
Right now I got so much on my hands. I got, two little ones that is running around, and we're quarantined at home. So I believe I will once, my kid is more independent. My youngest daughter is in kindergarten, so I really gotta, kind of hold her hand to do everything. But I know in a couple of years I will be doing a lot more in my community.
Wow. Well, we would vote for you, that's for sure.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a beautiful mental model.
Yeah.
The whole way, when you were talking, so much of what you were saying was about your community.
Yes.
And one thing I've really come to understand about people in poverty that I think sometimes gets missed is that people want to give back.
Yes. Yes,
and
that's
a great way to recruit, is to say, do you want to help your community? And people go,
yes.
yeah, I do.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people here because there's, I've been here since I was a little girl, and a lot of people, they know me. I'm a familiar face around here. So, they always want to help, especially when, they know, what it was and what it could be. Yeah. A lot of people want to get involved. So now my future story, my goal is to not move out of my community, but, move out of public housing. Right now I'm educating myself to become a professional real estate investor. So I want to invest in properties around this community to make like shelters in place, because I know there's a lot of people that, live with people that, cannot get into public housing, because here in Hawaii, it is just so, it is so overwhelmed, the public housing system. And there's a lot of people that needs, shelters. So I want to help, especially like single mothers that's trying to get out of abusive relationships and, domestic violence, and just want to, start their lives. And so I want to give them a safe place to take their children where they can grow. I want to help, troubled teens that, cannot find their directions in life, that needs that support, because, I was that troubled teen that, got addicted to drugs and got pregnant at a young age. So I wanna target, the teenagers. I also want to target, men that's coming out of prison to help, just to help them take their next steps in life. So that's my goal, is to, invest in my community around here and just help, people take their next step in life.
That is great. It's wonderful. Thanks for sharing that with us. It's inspiring, just great to hear. So thank you for sharing that. Kathy, I'm going to ask you to go last, because I think what we can do is have Chantal, is it a court? Is that how you pronounce your name? And Kathy, you can then wrap up by talking about community stuff, I think, that you've been so involved in. Would that be okay?
That'll be fine.
Okay, thanks, Kathy. So Chantal, do you want to tell your story in the 4-part model? Are you there?
Okay, yeah, I'm here. I didn't expect to go, but I guess I can quickly.
Let's see how much time we have. We're going to try to gauge this. Carol, are you on the line?
You do it in like 5 minutes, Chantal?
Yeah, or even less. Just give me a quick framework for the 4-part again, so I can.
Okay, so it's, what was it like? What did you do? What concept in getting ahead did you use, and what's it like now?
Okay. All right.
Boy, this is
all right.
Yeah. Not asking you too much there.
Okay, so what it was like, raised in a single parent household, mother of 3, not much support, but I didn't realize the traumas that I had been through until the course. I didn't realize that, the tyranny of the moment, which I was living in, which made it hard to have abstract thoughts and to reach my goals. So what I did, I would go to small group to small group to small group until someone pointed me in the direction of an organization called Circles, which trained us in the getting ahead information. And I just absorbed it all. I was just like, this is so amazing. I've never seen any program as holistic as this, that really touched on all the different areas of life and put them all together. And so what I did then is just started to show up for myself and realize that there's people out there that want to help and meet me at my point of need if I was able to be vulnerable and share my situation. And so I just continued to do that, and I used my skills as an organizer. Like, I was born in London, I moved here at 4, I moved all over the place all my life, so I've always been trying to bridge the gap and make my life work. But I realized that there is bridging social capital, and that is what is needed in order to help me unpack my suitcase and lighten my load. And so now I'm a board member on some organizations. I'm on some advisory councils helping my community. I am actually an ally to a leader. I'm on the planning and recruitment team. And I just want to share this with everybody because it's so important for us to know that we're not alone. And there's, great opportunities when we can work together. So
wow. Well, you did that in 4 minutes, I think. Well done.
Thank you.
That's a great story too, isn't it? Wow.
Yeah.
This makes me wish that we could just sit around and talk all day, but we can't. So Kathy, do you want to talk about, you can put it in a 4-part, but the other day when we were talking about this, there's a whole lot about the community, and we all have talked about the community here. What do you see the role of getting ahead is in the community setting?
First I want to say thanks to all of you ladies, because everything you said was everything I have written down on my cheat sheet note. And it's just experiences and how they're utilized. So the goal of all of the investigators, or the majority of the investigators, once they complete getting ahead, is to take it to the community. What I realized is we've always helped each other in the community, but this gave a bigger framework, a larger picture of how we can do it now that we have gained the knowledge that we didn't have, the self-confidence and the support. So I think that's the biggest thing I received from everybody who said, I'm checking, yes, this happened, yes, this happened, yes, this happened. I would like to talk about, first, the getting ahead in the community, how we took it to the community. And Ruth, if you will, can put up the first slide. Anyway, we'll go on. When I first started, it was in the drug court. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But when we were started going in the community, it was a large group. All of the investigators worked really hard, as you see in this clip. We always get a consent form to be able to use photos for this type of event. So I always, anything I do, I take my Getting Ahead family with me, because those are the voices that make changes. So this is a group where when we started the book, I started very early on. The Getting Ahead workbook was half the size that it is now. And the beauty of it is we learn from the people doing the work. So the book grew larger and larger with new information, because we hear from the voices of Getting Ahead participants, people who live in poverty, they're the professionals, because professionals do the same things all the time. So this is a group where we were really studying at this point. Issues were coming up about race, believe it or not, comes full circle. This one was done in 2010, but the whole group had the common knowledge of what was going on here in Columbus, Ohio. It was the recession area, and it took a lot of work after the economy collapsed. So we worked really hard together to bring knowledge and information. Another thing, a point I want to make is, after about the third group, the first session, the group kind of gels, because they learn each other and they realize that they're having some of the similar experiences and they're not alone. So the conversations got deeper, more relevant to their lives. The what it's like now. If you want to go to the next slide, Ruth, please. The what it's like now, and then we start looking at all the information. This is one of the co-facilitators who is still co-facilitating today. And we were doing the, what's it like now in the different economic groups. As the group went on, the work groups went on, and the changes in society, what the investigators realized is they had more knowledge of how to survive in all of these difficult times than a lot of people in middle class. We had a lot of people who lost their jobs, and they start asking, how did you learn how to live like this? The investigations were powerful, because across the country, people lost so much of their income, lost their houses, and the resources that people in poverty have been using all of their life came to play. So I heard someone else say that a little bit earlier. They were asking, how do you live off of this much money with the food stamps? Or how do you make your food stretch? What kind of meals are you cooking? So all of those things. We started having community groups and gatherings to bring all of that information together. And the voices of the people in poverty were heard for like the first time that they felt, because people didn't listen to people in poverty when a lot of things came up. But this was a dire need, that a lot of people were in situational poverty, and people living in poverty had the answers. Okay. The groups were so invested. During one session, the venue that we had was shutting down for the holidays. The group did not want to shut down. So if you go to the next slide, they decided we don't want to shut down for 6 weeks. So we ended up at one of the investigators' houses for the next few sessions. They wanted to keep on because this was their lives that they did not want to give up on. And the next slide is the same thing. And we got a lot of things accomplished. After that session, we went back, and I think out of a group of, we had 13, we went over a little bit because we usually lose a couple of people, a few people. We lost 2 people. During this process, investigators get to start talk about their own lives and then what they want to do. They realize their skill sets. They realize their creativity is amazing, how they help each other. One of the stories on this one that I wanted to use is they never had any money. They kept running out of money and they couldn't save money. We talk a lot about money management, and one of the investigators said, I don't have any money to manage. One of them said, well, let's do this. We will go and do the Christmas fund. So you know how you put your money in the Christmas fund? Once you start putting your money in this Christmas savings, you cannot get it out. So that was their solution. Some of them started a Christmas savings, and how you get the check every year, they went back and put it back in, and they started saving money. That was the only way they could save it, because they said they always needed it. If they put it up, there was always a crisis where they needed money. So this was a way for them to begin saving. The creativity, how creative people became and how they solved some of their problems. The lack of knowledge. When going through the workbook, there were so many things that came to light that they did not know. And after doing their self-assessment and the community assessment, creativity became it was just so creative about how people got information across to people that they wanted to hear. A gentleman, I will tell a few stories. A gentleman came in and he had to go to our jobs and opportunity services for its what is it? I can't even think of the name of it now. Anyway, to get services. And he would go after work all the time. He ended up coming back to the group 3 weeks in a row and said, I could not get served. One of the ladies who had worked in that position at one time or worked at the agency said, just go in there, put on a nice shirt and a jacket. And he did that. He walked up to the desk and they said, wait a minute. He said, I was served in 20 minutes, just by making little simple changes that we never think about. So how they are creative and share knowledge across with each other was a big step. And the problem solving skills. A quick story on Ohio in, I think it was 2008 or 2010. Anybody who lived in Ohio, the whole state froze. It froze over for several weeks. So people in middle class, if they had opportunity, they could go to a hotel that had services open, but people in poverty, they weren't able to go anywhere. So what they did was went up to one person's house. They took blankets, they took their blankets, they took their all the foods that they had grills outside, and they survived. They had candles, but not the little smelly kind. They had the kind that in case their lights went out, they had flashlights. They were already equipped for emergencies like this. So we laughed about the strengths that people in poverty had. And I'm gonna go back to my beginnings. When I first started getting ahead, facilitating, it was in 2004, and it was with our drug court. If you want to go to the next one, Jennifer Bruner was our judge court judge, and she was also a British trainer at that time. In the drug court, she wanted to bring the getting ahead and the just getting by world for the felony probationers. So we applied that, and it was amazing on how people sucked up information and shared the information, the barriers that comes along with being a felon, and even in the family, and a lot of it with drugs and everything that goes along with it. One of the issues that came up was voting, and I think it's very important for our time now. But voting came up, and the majority of people didn't vote. Lack of information. One of the things that was said is, if you're a felon, you can never vote. That wasn't true in our state. So we heard, well, my family never voted. Our votes don't count anyway. But there was a judge on the bench at that time in the felony court, and he had been unfair to a lot of people, and a lot of the felons was not comfortable with him. So you have to make things relevant. I said, well, vote him out. And they looked at me like I was crazy. I said, register to vote, go tell all your felony friends, and vote him out. And that's what they did. They told everybody that they went to register to vote, told their friends to register to vote, and this judge was voted out for the first time in many years. And they felt a victory. That was a big victory for a lot of people in the criminal justice system who had been tied up. Jennifer Bruner at that time, like I said, was a drug court judge, but she was running for Secretary of State. And many of the participants or the investigators, we worked on her campaign with her. We, if not worked directly with her, supported, did whatever we could. And she did win the election for Secretary of State at that time. So I look at, we do have people, allies from middle class that assist us in understanding. Jennifer Bruner that was a picture of her earlier. She also gives back. She's still invested. She spoke to one of the Getting Ahead graduations in the last few years, actually. You just call her up and she's there. She's also on the appellate court right now, and she's running for our Supreme Court of Ohio. So as for our Getting Ahead participants, we've had many cohorts, many different places, but we have bring everybody together, let them know what's going on in our community so we can all support each other, because many of the investigators has done great things as stand in front of the state legislature to help change the rules for human trafficking. We have a gentleman who was raised in the system of child services in the foster care system, who is now working strongly with a lot of the young men and women in foster care and the agencies to help look at some of the barriers for those who are lost between the age of 18 and 21, especially. I just can't tell, but when one of the investigators needs something, we're still all connected. If they're not connected with each other, we connect them. And we just continue to grow and help and support each other. I have to say, not just in Ohio, but Carol, I spoke with Carol several times. I'm Mike in North Carolina, and just recently, not Ruby, but Bonnie in Arizona. So we stay connected all over the country, and that's how Getting Ahead works. People in poverty share their experiences, and we share it amongst each other. We also, in middle class, we learn what we don't know. So it makes it.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Really, really interesting. And the point you ended up on, I love so much, is that the group learns together.
Yes.
And then we bring people from all classes to learn together and all sectors. And then we learn from each other across the country.
Yes.
And in other countries, right? So we have people from Australia on this and from Canada and other places. So yeah, that's the joy of this work, is that it just keeps growing, right? So we're all part of this huge learning community. And I must say, this is our first virtual such event, right? And normally we get together, which is a lot of fun, because then you can, go to meals together and, talk and visit and so on, that kind of stuff. But even so, this, I think, is working pretty well. I think we've gone virtual and we should give Ruth a little round of applause.
No.
Yes.
Right.
Ruth.
Thank you. Any questions from the audience? I know Jesse Quintano added on in video. He's a Getting Ahead graduate too. But what questions do you all have about Getting Ahead and issues that you might be having in your community that these folks could maybe answer for you?
Yep, let's see them.
What do you have? You can put them in the chat. You can open up your mics if you want. We technically have 8 minutes left. Let's see what we got going here.
Okay.
Yes, we've gotten a lot of great response in the chat about each of you that have presented. So here's one. Next steps in our community for our Getting Ahead grads to continue learning.
Mm-hmm. Well, every community kind of tackles that on their own, and they listen to what the Getting Ahead graduates need. I mean, isn't that the most relevant way to go at it, right? So sometimes people have ideas on what they think people in poverty should do, and they can try to put people into a project here or there. But when people are saying, I want to build this resource, then we need to kind of help them build that resource, right? So that's kind of our basic approach. Someone says, does anyone do Getting Ahead virtually? And, there's a Chinese phrase that's Wei Ji, and it means wherever there's a crisis, there's an opportunity, right? And that applies to the addiction field too. Every time someone with an addict or an alcoholic has a crisis, there's the opportunity, right, to get it right. So that concept is, we were hit with COVID, and a whole bunch of Getting Ahead groups across the country were partway in or halfway through. And so they began on their own going virtual. So we began talking, and Ruth and others would put together these phone calls. And now, and this didn't take long, I'm really proud of AHA for being able to do this. There's one link that Ruth could send you where you can pick up all the documents that you need to show on a screen that match what's in the book. And all the forms that you would use to calculate things are fillable forms that can be sent to the facilitator. So actually people don't have to do the math. I mean, so the self-assessment, the stability scale, all those things are built into the virtual program. And Ruth, this is all free, isn't it? I mean, it's just.
Yeah. I put that link into, it's a short video from Treasure McKinsey in Oklahoma. And then in there, it tells you where to go on to the AHA site to get the forms that Phil was talking about.
And I don't know if you, go ahead.
Nope. I have another question when you're done.
All right. Well, I was going to say, and when we introduced this idea to people in Hawaii, they said, well, now we can get to the remote islands. We can actually have people from there joining groups. So that was cool. And if you think about some of our more rural states, people that are way out there in northeastern Colorado, there's 15 people per square mile, they could be part of a group now. So this virtual world is actually going to be an advantage in some ways. So it's a pretty exciting time.
Pam asked if anybody has started virtual classes from the very, very beginning and how people bonded.
Yeah. Well, I know because we just did a little webinar on this, that has happened, and they have activities built into this that can help you get people to know each other pretty quickly. And the other thing is, you know, if you're sitting at home with your device, you get to meet their kids and dogs and cats too, right? So
Whole family.
yeah.
Good point.
So there's that kind of stuff going, and it just happens. I think that's so different from the middle class, is that people in poverty make relationships really quickly, right?
Yes.
And that's the beauty of it. The middle class, you know, the big joke is, you know, if you're looking for a new boyfriend or girlfriend, you know, the first question is, what do you do? And then you know whether they're educated enough, right? Or making enough money for you to show any interest in them, right? But in poverty, it's like, we can make friends much quicker. So I think that works. You know, it might be a little awkward at times, and we have to set rules. Yeah.
I know that one woman told us that she used her Zoom to call everybody ahead of time and ask questions and meet their kids and stuff, so that when they came to the first class, they were comfortable with one person, the facilitator,
Cool.
that might ask. What can we recommend to provide post support for a first group after getting ahead, while we learn more about what they need?
Well, I would say they're going to tell you, and you'll be listening. I mean, you'll hear about needs on the day one. The first conversation is, what's poverty like in your community? And so you'll be hearing all kinds of things from them from the very start. So, but what do you think, the rest of you? How would you answer that question? What would be something that's pretty standard that is a next step for most people? Is it financial literacy? What is it?
So we use the parking lot. The things that were most important for the investigators, we put on that parking lot board. For the immediate needs. And those are the things we addressed. Even after the work groups got over, we would, and many of the groups still do this, they will gather once a month or once every other month and set up their own little sub-communities, and then see what's coming up, even in the community at that time. But the parking lot transportation was an issue, especially the bus services here in Franklin County. Some of those things were addressed in some of the communities. Payday lending, of course, that was one of them addressed way back when. But all of those things on the parking lot were things that were important enough to take to the community and make changes.
Great. Kathy, how about you answer this one too? How has your community managed to reach out to other community groups? How have your graduates managed to reach out to other community groups and connect with them to improve the local community?
As I was saying, I will take Dante, for instance. He grew up in foster care, and the barriers that he had, he did build relationships with some of the people who were trying to help him. So he took this new information to them, and they were able to put it together and start utilizing it in the communities or in the organizations, and it grows from there. Bring in other people who have gone through the work group so they can hear, because middle class, often we think we know what poverty looks like or what it is or what we should work on, and don't really know the barriers or the real issues. So this came to light, and that voice is being heard.
Oh, thank you. And Phil, this is going to be our last question. Are most investigators recruited through nonprofit agencies? And at the same time, can you talk about the different getting aheads available?
Okay. There's different ways of recruiting. So you can go to a variety of places for it, but what you want to end up with is the most diverse group possible, right? Because there's so much wisdom in all the different spaces. So you want men and women, young and old, able-bodied and disabled. You want every kind of diversity that you could get in the room, get them there. After that, that's the best learning environment, right? It's the richest possible learning environment. So that's my advice on that one. What was the other question?
what are the varieties of getting ahead?
Oh,
And you know what? If everybody would turn on their cameras right now, we'd love it.
yeah.
Let's see who's here.
Let's see
Yeah.
who's there. So there's a getting ahead in the workplace that Ruth is involved in. There's getting ahead while getting out for people coming out of prison. There's investigations in the economic class in America, which is for first generation low income students. So facilitators of one can quickly become a facilitator of the others, you know, so that, and then there's a new element that we were just hearing about from Adrian Elder. It's a supplement for ACEs. So you could attend a 3-hour session that Adrian and I would do, and then you could do getting ahead and add the supplement for people that have adverse childhood experiences, ACEs. And so that's brand new, brand new. So those are the different versions of getting ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Tomorrow, we will be talking with a facilitator who does work in with incarcerated folks and some investigators that used getting ahead while they were incarcerated. And so that's going to be a very interesting conversation too. And they have wonderful stories to share. So if that is open on your schedule tomorrow, we ask you to join that one. If you have any more questions, we'll stay on just a little bit longer, but this concludes today. So let's give those panelists a round warm of applause. They did a great
Thank you, panel.
job.
Thank you so much, you guys. It was great working with you. Stay in touch, okay?
Always.
Thank you.
Right. Thank
All
you.
right. All right. We'll see you tomorrow for more breakouts. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.